Welcome to the Cardinal Newman Society Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Murphy. In 2023, the Cardinal Newman Society extended our core product, the Newman Guide, to go beyond just colleges, but also to get into the K through 12 market and into the graduate program market. One of our first graduate programs that was approved was Divine Mercy University's programs, and I am going to read the programs. Divine Mercy University has a Master's of Science in Psychology, a Master's of Science in Counseling, a Doctorate in Clinical Psychology, and a Doctorate in Counselor Education and Supervision, all approved on the Newman Guide. Joining us today is the president of Divine Mercy University, Father Charles Sikorsky. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Kevin. It's an honor and a joy to be with you here today.
So we want people to understand what Divine Mercy University is doing, number one. We want people to know where they can access you and what kinds of things they could do so that they could see God's calling in their life and maybe see the fulfillment in exactly what you're offering, living out that life in this arena, because it is so important today. I've talked to you outside of this interview about this increasing mental health issue, the increasing mental health issues, especially among our youth. And so I want to start off by saying, if you would, Father Charles, just tell us a brief history of Divine Mercy University. How did it come about? How did you decide to go into this arena of psychology, clinical counseling, et cetera? How did that ever come about?
Well, so it came about in the late 90s. There were a group of Catholic psychotherapists who got together, and because they saw a dichotomy between how they'd been trained with what they'd seen that works in practice, right? So, meaning, most of the social sciences today are more reductionist. They take faith out of the equation. And so these therapists saw, hey, there's a real need to blend the two, to take the best of science and blend it with what we know about the human person, what we know about the spiritual life, what we know about God and faith. And we're integral beings, right? You can't separate the mental from the spiritual, or the spiritual from the bodily, and so forth. And so we're integrated beings, and we need to treat people that way. So that's how it began. The idea was to do that. So they started off with some continuing education courses, and then after a while, they saw that they were doing well with that, but they wanted to make a bigger impact. They felt called to do more and to really change the profession. And so the idea then came up, if we're ever going to do this, we need to start a training program, start training people at the graduate level so that they're prepared to go out and get licensed and to be part of this thing and really make a difference in the field. So that's how it started. We had the right people.
And what year was this, Father?
So they started that in 97, 98. Okay. And then the graduate school started in 1999.
Okay.
So the founder and the person who was the impetus behind it all is Dr. Gladys Sweeney. Okay. I'm 6'4". She's about 5'5", maybe 4, maybe whatever, from Chile, but a real dynamo and a real visionary. And she just stepped out in faith, with they didn't have a place. The first classes were held in a hotel. They were working on getting permission to get it. They rented some space in Northern Virginia, but it wasn't, it was delayed and they had to get things done. So it started there, but she ended up getting top line faculty. One of the first ones was Dr. Paul Vitz, who was tenured professor at New York University, NYU up in New York, who had written a lot about, he'd had a conversion himself back in the 70s, and had written a lot about this issue of how psychology sort of has been offered as a replacement for faith, as a replacement for God. But that when you look at the full truth of the human person, it's a legitimate field of study. It just needs to be properly founded and oriented. And that's how this all came about. Early on, one of the faculty members was Father Benedict Rochelle, who some people may remember from EW2N, who was a priest, a psychologist, and a very funny man. He has some great jokes.
You know what else about him?
Yeah.
He played a very vital role in the development of the Newman Guide. In fact, at one time we had accumulated all the data about all the colleges that were in the United States, which there's about 215, 220, depending on what source you go to. And we were looking at all of them and evaluating them under the scope of what a Newman Guide college would be. And he actually flipped the tables for us and said, well, let's not talk about all the things that are going wrong at these colleges. Why don't we talk about the ones that are doing it right? And therefore, the Newman Guide was born.
Newman Guide was born, yeah.
So he had an impact in yours as well?
He taught a course probably for 10 or 12 years. He would come down for 2 weeks. They condensed it because he had so many other things going on.
Yeah.
And he gave me a lot of confidence. I've been there now 19 years. And the first time I met him, he was doing a book signing in D.C. And I was kind of nervous. Like, I'm going to meet him. And what's he think of me?
Yeah, he was kind of a celeb at the time.
And he looks at me and goes, oh, you're my new boss. Kind of like,
taking on the president.
Yeah, I felt, it was a great way to make someone feel
that's a great introduction, isn't it?
Yeah. So, but what a great man. He really contributed a lot. And then we had some philosophers and scholars, some Dominican fathers Father Benedict Ashley, who'd written a lot about philosophical psychology. So there was a lot of work being done within the church, but we tried to put all that together as best we could. Obviously, the writings of St. John Paul II on personalism and Aquinas, all those kinds of things that are foundational and are weaved throughout all of our curricula.
You had mentioned about the very meaning of the word psychology. Could you talk about that? We were just kind of chatting about that before we came on the air.
Right. Well, it's the study of the soul, right? The word psyche comes from the ancient Greek, which means soul, which includes the mental and spiritual workings of the human person. And so that whole sense of interiority, who we are, it's the most fundamental, most important part of our being.
Right.
And it needs to be treated the right way.
I think we're at a really interesting time in the church, in church history, because suddenly we're looking at these things and we're adopting a phrase that I repeat often on this podcast, and that is a phrase from Pope John Paul II, to penetrate the temporal order with the truths of Christ and his church. Regardless of where you are, right? If you're an accountant, then you penetrate the temporal order with the truths of Christ and his church by being the best accountant you can be, right? And bringing Christ's principles to work in that arena. So it's the same thing in this arena, right? I mean, I think when I think about psychology and those things, people don't put that together. As a matter of fact, I think there's been concerted effort to divest us of anything faith-related in that equation because somehow it indicated a bias, right?
Well, it did. There was a movement where basically psychology was proposed as really a substitute for religion, starting with Freud. A lot went up to a guy named Albert Ellis, who wrote a lot that, religion actually does more damage than good to the person, and he claimed to have had the psychological evidence for that. Well, what I can tell you is over the last 40 or 50 years, there's no doubt he's been proven completely wrong. All the studies on religion and spirituality show things like prayer, religious belief, your values. All these things are helpful to your psychological well-being and your mental health. And so, give it a quick one. During COVID, there was a study that came out that said those who went to mass or to church, wasn't just mass, church every Sunday actually had better mental health outcomes than before COVID.
Is that right?
Those who had, there was a big decline during COVID for mental health. And you think, well, why? And my hypothesis is that the reason for that is that I think COVID showed people that, as beautiful as our world is, as wonderful all these things we've built, that man has built here, it can all the whole system can come crumbling down in a second.
Didn't we see that?
And we saw that. And so I now feel more validated as a believer because I know my faith matters. And I know my faith, I've seen all these things shut down and, financial all the things that happened. And yet I still believe, I still have hope.
Yeah.
And so I think people, and that would help your mental health.
Oh, and
I now have more proof that I'm on the right track here.
Yeah, that's interesting because all the studies that you see coming out of the pandemic, post-pandemic, is the negative effect of the pandemic on mental health, especially for youth. For whatever reason, they came out overall, came out worse than when it started, right? So why is that? What was it that you think? Was it just that uncertainty of time? Was it being somehow, sequestered somewhere where they couldn't have that communal aspect to their life? Was it a combination of those things?
Well, I think there's several reasons. I think first of all, we're starting off in a culture where marriage and the family are in crisis, have been in crisis for decades. You've had this growth of social media and this virtual world, and then you throw in the shutdown and the pandemic and the uncertainty. There's a decline in religious belief. You put all these factors together, and that's what you get.
Right.
And so we've seen it's a horrible crisis now with, rising rates of depression, rising rates of suicide. People just, looking for hope, looking for healing, but looking in all the wrong places. Social media causing so many different problems with young people now. We see sexuality, so many issues now with gender dysphoria, pornography addiction. There's just so many things out there that need attention, and we can only do it if we need to know the truth about the human person. What is a human person?
Right.
And the great thing about the Catholic Church, we know what a human person is.
Right.
There's a lot of we can make a lot of criticisms of the Catholic Church and our history and so forth. However, we've become an expert in human nature, and so putting that in, as you say, in all the different professions, but in particular in this area where we're studying the soul and where one's interior life is so important, we need people who are equipped to go out and do that.
It's interesting because I find that when youth are questioning things, it's a great time for us to tell them answers, right? And to be an authentic witness. And we have seen just recently with, as we've talked about, with like the Charlie Kirk, authentic witness attracts. And if we could do that, if we can go out and share with them, like you're saying, the fullness of the human person, the idea of being able to take the gifts that God has given you and putting them to work, not being ashamed of faith, not hiding it or segmenting it in your life, but actually incorporating it into everything you do, you can find the happiness that you're really seeking.
Absolutely. And it strengthens our faith, standing up for it and being willing to go public with it or just sharing it with it. We're encouraged to do that. It's part of the dynamic of our baptism, I would say.
Yeah.
We're forgiven. We're made adoptive children of the Father, but we also come with a mission, right? And we have a mission to do that. And as you said, John Paul II says, right, it's got to go through the culture and in all different walks of life, in all the different areas. And I think the area of psychology and mental health is one of the most critical nerve centers that we have in our culture. It impacts educators. It impacts, counselors and therapists. We've seen sexuality, all these different ideas is because of a misunderstanding of human nature and bad psychology.
And the social media just exacerbates that because in social media, you can create what you think. You can present a fake world to people. And they really, and they think that's the real thing, right?
And they're growing dangers. So AI right now, and I'm not trying, I'm a very hopeful person, but I don't want to discourage anybody, but artificial intimacy is coming, and where it's not coming, it's already there. And so people are seeing in therapy now, people coming with a problem that they got almost seduced by a robot. Mm. And then they discovered there was a boy down in Florida, 14 years old, who committed suicide. Mm. Why? He got seduced by this online person who could talk to him, who would react to what he said. Because this technology, as you know, is
that's
rapidly.
Why your position in the face of AI, because I agree with you on, I think AI, we are in the very beginning of AI, and we're all, even the people that are involved in it are kind of astonished at its progress. All the schools and colleges are fighting it, Suddenly people that couldn't write are are eloquent writers. They're giving speeches or doing a review of a book in minutes. It's all coming, and it's coming faster than I think they thought. So I just saw, what was it the other day, Grok 4, where a gentleman held his phone over his living room and asked for an analysis and a song about his living room. And it was created within a minute or less.
Within a minute, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what I say. I think it's perfect. I think that's why Divine Mercy University could fill an incredible role, because the need for mental health awareness, the need for people finding others that they can truly, talk to and find real life is going to only increase.
Well, and you think about it with AI, how do we use AI to serve the human person? I mean, that's a big question, and I don't have the answer, but the church is going to be talking about Pope Leo, apparently very interested in this theme, which is, I think, very good news that he had that at the top of his list, to actually be aware of this problem. But the corporate world, the educational world, it's a challenge, but it's not going to go away.
Right.
So how do we use it to serve the person rather than exploit and destroy the person?
Father, who out there, as people are listening to this podcast, who would be someone that you would say, hey, you need to look at us. You need to consider this. What kind of a student maybe would be drawn to Divine Mercy University? And also, what percentage of your activity is done in person and what percentage is done online?
So we have different programs for different people. So I want to say there's a pretty big demographic of people who would be interested in. But I would say this, some of the better students we've had and students who are looking to make a difference, first of all, who feel a call to help people on an individual basis, on a one-on-one basis, okay? So, are you the kind of person who someone says, I need to talk to you about, can you help me out? A friend, right? Yeah. A friend who's got an ear for people. We've had, former seminarians and religious sisters who see that. So who want to serve people, but their vocation, they discerned that wasn't what God wanted them to do. So people like that who have that kind of a disposition. And then the second thing, which I think ties in wonderfully with the work that the Newman Guide schools are doing, some of the better students we've had have been from theology, philosophy, humanities students, liberal arts, because they understand human nature. They understand life a lot better than someone who has a more mechanical type of degree. So, a lot of those students have done very well. And because if you have that foundation where you really understand, okay, I understand life and I've learned a lot from those liberal arts. It's a great stepping stone or segue, because they give you a career that will you can support yourself on, and you can you can also do really missionary work.
You had mentioned the founder of Divine Mercy University. Tell us about that and how she did it on a part-time basis, right?
Well, that's another thing, right? It's something that you can do if you go into private practice, or you can regulate how many hours you work. So, for instance, if someone who'd like to raise a family, she was finished her PhD, and so what she did was she would raise her children Monday through Friday. On Saturday, she would see 8 or 9 clients. Her husband would watch the kids on Saturday, and she would bring in around $40,000-$50,000 a year. That's what she told people. So there's a way you could actually benefit from the degree. And then when the kids got old enough to go,
she go more full time. She
went full time, and then she decided to found a university. So not everyone's called to found a university, but it's a career path that gives you flexibility. And we have all types. We had a former undercover cop who retired, and he's very interesting. He used to do contract murders. And
that was his.
He would bust contract murders.
Wow.
It's a whole another story I don't want to go into, but fascinating. But now he sees police officers and first responders. He's full. He's been out 2-3 years. And why? Because they are under a lot. And a lot of times they want to relate to someone who understands their experience.
Sure.
So he's done that. Many different examples I could give you. But yeah, from the mother who wants to raise her kids could do this part-time until there's an
Yeah.
opportunity for them to
How do we get those kids that are in school right now, that are in college, could be freshmen, sophomore, juniors, whatever, because most young people don't arrive at college with their desire of, I know what I'm going to be. I'm going to be an accountant. I'm going to be a marketing professional. They don't know that. When I worked on the college campus, I always said the number one major was undeclared because people just didn't know yet. How do we get those people to A, understand what you have to offer? What would you say to them?
Mm-hmm.
And B, to consider it?
As I said, some of our better students have been people who've seminarians, right? They wanted to work. They felt this desire to work deeply with people. Some have been focused missionaries, and they go on the college campus for 2 years, and they start seeing the different things. They do a great job with the missionary activity, but they start to see the needs of, particularly in the area of mental health, and they've come. So I would say, I think you're right. Undecided is it's not bad. It's not a bad thing to be undecided, but start thinking what qualities do I have, and how do I tie together also the undergrad education I'm getting. For instance, in the Newman Guide schools, one of the questions might be sometimes, well, people have, is the liberal arts worth it? Am I going to be able to get a job? What am I going to do with this? So this is one of the fields that it's a great segue. It's a great link between what you're learning now in those areas and how you could go on to serve and have a fulfilling career. Can be flexible as you're growing up and all that kind of thing.
What are the job outlooks for this group of workers right now?
Well, fortunately and unfortunately, they're not going to lack for clients. We have a mental health crisis that is significant. A lot of these issues I don't think are going to go away anytime soon. And I can say this: those who come from our program have a real niche within the Catholic world. So many dioceses, many different
corporations,
right? Whether they work for the diocese or just form their own center. We have a center here in the Diocese of Arlington. It's not run by DMU. It's called Alpha Mega Clinic. Well, they've got 30 therapists who work there, approximately. Yeah. And why? Because they are a Catholic-based organization called Alpha Omega. And so what they do, they get a lot of clients, and there's a lot of people looking for not just mental health care, but there's a bigger shortage of Christians and Catholics involved in the field. So I don't think you'll be looking for, it won't be hard.
You'll have your opportunities. Is there still this idea that mental health is a weakness and not or let's just say they question the idea of mental health? Is that still like negatively viewed? If somebody has mental health issues?
Yeah, there's a stigma out there. I think it's been breaking down.
Okay.
More people are coming forward, and that's why you're seeing wait lists at a lot of these clinics and so forth. But yeah, traditionally it's something. Just think about parish life for a second, right? We have prayer groups. We pray for a friend or a person we know, whether their husband or wife or someone in their family has cancer, and everybody's praying. Someone lost their job. Yeah. Someone died. There's tremendous support. But how many times in your parish think about it? We're going to pray for so-and-so's mental health, or the grandson or the son of someone, but they're out there, right? And so many problems. Could be drug addiction, could be marijuana right now causes so many problems, and other drugs. So there's a real need, and there's still a hesitancy, even though I think there has been significant progress in that. Particularly younger generation is much more seems much more open to say, "Hey, I need help."
What about the organizations that are in the fields that you're in, counseling and psychology? When they hear of Divine Mercy University, is that do they think that's accepted, or are you somehow, infringing upon this clear science that they have? I mean, how do they view? Are you readily accepted? Is the American Psychology Association, are they happy with Divine Mercy University, or how does that work?
Well, we're accredited. I think it's a mixed bag. I think those organizations. They do have a section on spirituality and mental health. where there's a lot of serious scholarship being done. I'm sure there are people there who do not like us, some of the policies and some of the different initiatives they might have. The field is very secular. Okay, I don't think you can question that. But I think as Catholics, we're kind of both and we're good. We can walk and chew gum at the same time as the Catholic Church, I'd like to say. Some people think that's too crass, but people used to make fun of me when I was growing up. Oh, you can't walk. I was tall and big. I'd win all the games with a lot of the kids. Well, you're only just because you're tall. You can't even walk and chew gum. But we can, when we take a serious, when we explain what we believe and why we believe it and what we believe about the human person, we blow them away. Because we've seen this over the years with different accreditors and agencies who've come to look at us. One time came, she was from the state, the initiative at the beginning of the school, and said, I don't think you guys should exist. This should be a seminary and so forth. After 2 or 3 days, there was like a 2-day visit, I think it was, and she came back and said, I'm so glad I came because one day you're going to be the Taj Mahal.
Oh, wow.
And there's something about that little room there with the red light on it. I don't know what it is, but there's something going on in there. And that was our mini chapel we had at the time. And so what it was engaging people. I think obviously the church is always going to be persecuted. We know that. The Bible says that. We're not always going to see eye to eye with the secular world and the culture. However, we're called to engage it. And we have intellectual tools and arguments that are powerful. So we shouldn't be afraid to engage.
No.
We see this in so many, look at Bishop Barron, he's engaging all these different people. Why? He has good arguments.
Right.
He explains things. And so that's what we do at DNU. We want to give people the tools to be able to go out and have that engagement and encounter with the culture and not be afraid of it and not do it we're not here to condemn the world. We're here to save the world.
Yeah. We talked about the kind of student that would flourish in this, might consider it, those type of things. Tell us the difference on in-person. What do you have as far as in-person education and then online? What's the numbers right now at Divine Mercy University? How many are each? And
right. So right now we have about 90% of our students are online.
Okay.
We have our clinical, our PsyD degree, which is doctorate in clinical psychology, is on site. And there's about 65 students in that program right now. And that's going to stay on site. But we have our biggest program is clinical mental health counseling, which has 325 students right now. And that's a master's degree. It's kind of a hybrid. They do a practicum in their city. And they come in, it's a 3-year program. They come in once a year for a 5-day residency to our campus. And because we need to blend it a little bit.
Sure.
But you need to make sure they have the right skills and so forth. So that's the way we do it. So really we have something for everybody, I would say. If you want to come and study in a doctoral program, you can do it on site. But the online programs give you flexibility. Many of the students who join one of the online master's programs are probably the range, maybe 30 to 45 years old. A second career, or they've been out of school for a while and they see, hey, I think I really know what I want to do. I tried a couple of other jobs and I really think I feel called to do this, so they'll want to go into counseling. To serve the church, or they've just had a different change in their life. Doesn't mean you can't. We do have a fair number who do come into the counseling online programs right out of college.
Right.
So that's there as well. And the advantage of that, of course, when you do it online and it's done very well, you're high academics, the cost, it's a little cheaper. You don't have to pay room and board, and you don't have to move and so forth. You can stay in your city. Sometimes you can still work part-time and so forth. Some actually work full-time.
See, I think that's, again, in the future, if we look out and we say, okay, here's these fields, we're penetrating them with our knowledge of the human person from a Catholic perspective. And then we know that the mental health issues are increasing. We know people are crying out for help. This is a prime opportunity. It's an open field for evangelization.
Evangelization. Yeah, that's the word. you're going to be able to talk to people on a very deep level. As priests, and we do that a lot.
Yeah.
In the spiritual realm, in confession and spiritual direction, or people just come with questions. But we have this crisis in the world. In fact, 40% of all mental health cases start with a member of the clergy or a minister or a rabbi, because it's so close to these deep questions. And sometimes it's not really a spiritual question, right? Father Groeschel had a great line. He said, a lot of people who come to spiritual direction really just need to see a psychotherapist. And a lot of people who go to psychotherapy really just need a spiritual director. Wow. And I think there's a lot of truth into that. So with these deep needs, it's a great opportunity for a person, as a layperson, as a therapist or counselor, to go deep and help people see what the true meaning and what's the true good for them in their life. And to have those conversations, and a lot of existential questions come up in therapy. They can build a rapport with someone, and all of a sudden they start to trust you, and they start telling you what's on their heart and what really is going on, and why they turn to alcohol so much, or why they feel they're depressed. And then you can really open the door to God's grace, open the door to the full truth, as we know as Catholics, that leads to a flourishing human life.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's critical evangelization, in my opinion.
I was surprised when you mentioned the number of professors at Divine Mercy University. Tell us what that is.
So right now, I think we're about 45 full-timers and another 30 or 40 part-time. So altogether, we have about 600 students. And so the programs are growing. The counseling program is 325. We're hoping to grow that to about 500. We feel like we can do that without, diminishing or compromising the quality. And there are a lot of good people. And as an online program, faculty can be anywhere in the country. Okay, so they don't need to move to the Washington, D.C. area with all that entails.
Thank goodness. No.
The cost of living and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So you can stay in your area, and it helps us to find better, mission fit faculty, people who are passionate about what we do. We're passionate about the church, the faith, and a Christian view and a Christian presence in the area of mental health. We want to bring Christ to this critical area in our country.
So let me ask you, from a priest's perspective of being a president for 19 years at Divine Mercy University, what is you could tell I'm coming up to a question. You're like, oh, this is going to be, what is the thing that has most surprised you in your role as president?
So the thing that's most surprised me, I'm going to think about that for a second here. The fact that I'm still here, they haven't fired me yet. I did 19 years. I think that's probably the best one. Let's start there. I have to say it's a work of God's grace and providence. It was up to, I probably would have run this thing into the ground, but we have a faculty member who was one of the founding faculty members, and one year at orientation, he said to the new incoming students, he said, I've been here 10 years. When I first came here, I was practicing Catholic, and I believed that miracles could occur. I'm totally cool with miracles. I thought, they can happen. I never thought I'd see one in my own life. After being here for 10 years, I've come to expect them. So seeing God's providence, that's surprising. Shouldn't be surprising. That's because I'm a weak vessel here, but that's been the biggest surprise. That's been something very surprising.
And what's the greatest reward? So
the greatest reward, seeing what our alumni are doing and hearing about what the impact that they're making. I used to say, though, that my favorite thing was graduation day, because we see so many people now getting ready to go out there on mission. To go out and, commencement means a beginning. And we're sending them out. And there's a lot of gratitude from the administration and the faculty to see how they've persevered and worked so hard. And now we're confident that they're ready to go out there and help change the world. So that was always. But someone recently asked me this question. I started thinking, the thing that actually is just hearing about our alumni. 3 or 4 occasions I've been at a place where someone would come up to me and say, "Father, I need to talk to you for a second." I said, "Sure. Well, what is it?" Well, I want to tell you something. My daughter or my son or my niece or nephew had a problem. We tried to find help everywhere, a mental health issue. And it was only your graduate. Till we found your graduates, we never got help. They were the only ones who could actually help them. And I just want to say thank you for what you've done.
Wow.
And, that to me has been, and some of these were fairly prominent people. And it really surprised me. So that's just been a great blessing. And not just personally, but for our faculty to hear that kind of stuff. I don't give out names, right? But I tell them, hey, someone came up to me and told me this. Some of our board, our donors, our whole community really gets inspired by that. And all the people who do all the hard work in the back office, right? And hey, we're making a difference. And God is leading this thing where we have hoped and prayed he would.
I would obviously be remiss, based on some of the things that are happening in the news, not to talk about a few of the issues. For example, this whole idea of trans or same-sex type things. When you see that and you see such an increase where before it wasn't an issue, and now all of a sudden it's prolific, where it's almost contagious, where people are identifying as one thing or another, where before it wasn't even a question. How does that come about? How does that capture momentum in people's imagination? And then what do the psychologists say about this? I mean, if they are detaching faith from all of this, what do they make of it?
First part, there was a pastoral letter that came out about a week ago, Bishop Daniel Thomas from Toledo. And he had a line in there, and I think it's great. He quoted someone who said, you weren't born into the wrong body, you were born into the wrong culture. And it's the culture that needs to change, not your body. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really why we're seeing a lot of this. It used to be a very rare thing, gender dysphoria. Gender confusion is always, or sexual confusion is kind of, it's just part of life. We grow through stages, we grow out of it. But this gender dysphoria was very rare. But now, particularly with social media, and he mentions TikTok, which I don't watch, but there are videos of people talking about how they transition and how you can do it without your parents knowing, and
some schools are helping
workshop.
With that.
I mean, yeah. And so that's the cultural pressure and so we're seeing now numbers in different surveys of the number of young people, claiming a transgender identity. So that's, I think, the culture's really driving it. Before it was rarer, and a lot of it was abuse, like severe sexual abuse in an early age.
Yeah.
There's a big connection there.
Yeah.
That
is so true. People overlook that. I did some prison ministry at one time, and I remember we had a guest speaker, and the guest speaker came in, was talking about sexuality, and one of the things he said, I'd like you just by a show of hands, and there were 55 people in the room. And he said, how many of you have suffered abuse or sexual abuse, he said. And I would say all but 5 people raised their hand.
Yeah.
And I even thought that was wrong. I was like, no, he means sexual abuse, not just abuse like, you're abused, but I mean, and everybody looked at me like, yeah, I know. And that's why, and they kept their hands up. 50 out of 55 people.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, and then you wonder, I mean, on all of these things that have come out of it, how much did that play a role?
And I think, and this is more anecdotal, but this is just one of our, he's graduated now, but he did an internship which he ended up seeing a lot of people in the LGBT community or that group demographic, let's say. And he said, but you have to understand 80% of these people were sexually abused that he dealt with. And so, as the Catechism says, we can't say there's one cause of it, but a lot of times these are hurting people. We have to have a lot of compassion, right? Yes, we need to stand up for God's truth. Yes, we need to promote that as what's going to make us happy. But we also have to do it with tremendous compassion and understanding that these are generally very hurt people a lot of times. Oh, yeah. And that's why we see so many different problems out there with it. So
faith, hope, and love remain, and the greatest of these is
love.
Love,
right?
And I think that's where we do have to remember that, because it's easy to say, well, I don't suffer from this particular sin. I'll just condemn those.
Correct.
Right.
And so that's very important when we talk about these issues. Okay. And knowing at the same time, okay, we do have, how do we present the truth? How do we present the truth and the true good to this person?
Yeah.
And so as far as, I can't speak for all psychologists. I can speak for, and I'm not a psychologist myself, but I can tell you the approach that I've heard that works. Meeting the person where they are, hearing their story, and then, building a rapport with them and helping them understand their dignity as a child of God, and getting them to explore. Or maybe that's not the right thing.
Right.
So I'd say there's a lot of similarities to this. If you think about crisis pregnancy centers, what's the goal? Okay, we want to figure out how do we save this baby,
right.
Which doesn't mean lecturing them on abort, right? Usually the ones that I know of that have worked, right? You build a rapport, you work through similar, same kind of process, right? You want to show them, hey, I love you, I want to help you,
and I'm here.
I'm not going to recommend, obviously, not going to recommend things that I think are bad for you, and so that's the approach that I think needs to be taken, and that works.
Yeah, absolutely, Father. Let's just take a quick break and we'll come back. I want to continue this dialogue and see what we can do. I want everybody to know Divine Mercy University. Is it divinemercyuniversity.edu? Divinemercy.edu, which is interesting because then you're gonna get some other options. So we want to make sure they know Divine Mercy University is divinemercy.edu. Excellent. If you'd like to learn more about how you can help promote and defend faithful Catholic education, go to cardinalnewmansociety.org. Also, if you're interested in promoting and defending faithful Catholic education wherever it is found, subscribe to the Cardinal Newman Society Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform.